Hello there, people! Yep, this is another part of the series whereby I am now going to read the Real Barenziah, the final book of Daggerfall. We basically have been going through, doing every book in this bloody game, torture ourselves, hunting for each random one, and, well, today we've kind of gotten very, very lucky, finding basically the one remaining singular book remaining, and all the different parts for Real Barenziah. But the remaining book, because we had 3 to go for, turned out to be just the same as the book we also read today, except in German. It basically was a translated one that ended up accidentally appearing in the final game. So yeah, it's a curious oddity if you find it, but nothing that I feel like we were going to go out of our way for, because if it's just a German translation of something we've already seen, it feels completely pointless to do such. So therefore, I'm not going to really worry about that one. If we see it, we see it. But right now, what I care about doing is reading the Real Barenziah. A really lengthy, 10-part book series that's probably going to take a lot of parts like King Edward did. But, if we start it now, and start working our way through it, hopefully we'll get rid of our reliance right here on Part 4 in the library. That's the only part we have in the library. After that, if all the books disappear from the library, we do not have a problem. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to hope for. Okay, let's go to just the Real Barenziah because they didn't label it Part 1. But now I'm pretty assured that's Part 1 because it's the only part we do not have numbered. So yeah, by process of elimination, we have figured out that this is indeed Part 1. Ain't that brilliant? We're using strategy. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so it's shorter than, whatever you call it, that other book. I forget its name now. Oh, King Edward. It's shorter, so let's try and deal with it. And it tells about the story of Barenziah, which is someone that we do know about, unlike King Edward, who we had no idea who he was. At least Barenziah has ties to Elder Scrolls Arena. It basically sounds like she's being made out to be like an important character or so that is being retconned into the story of Arena. So yeah, 500 years ago in Mournhold, City of Gems, there lived a blind widow woman and her only child, a strapping young man. He was a miner, as was his father before him, a common laborer in the king's mines, for his magical ability was but small. The work was honorable, but poorly paid. His mother made and sold small wildenberry cakes in the market to help eke out their living. They did well enough, his mother said. They had enough to fill their bellies. No one could wear more than one suit of clothing at a time. And the roof only leaked when it rained. Symmachus would have liked it more. He hoped for a lucky strike in the mines, which would garner him a huge bonus. A large bonus. In his free hours, he enjoyed hoisting a glass of ale at the tavern with his friends, and gambling with them at cards. And he drew the eyes and sighs of more than one pretty elven girl, although none held his interest for long. In short, Symmachus was a typical young dark elf man, remarkable only for his size. It was rumored that he had a bit of Nord blood in him. In Symmachus' 30th year, there was a great rejoicing in Mournhold, for a girl child was born to the Lord and his lady. A queen, the people sang. A queen is born to us. For among the people of Mournhold, the birth of a female heir is a sure sign of peace and prosperity to come. When the time came for the royal child's rite of naming, the mines were closed, and Symmachus rushed home to bathe and dress in his best. I'll come straight home and tell you about it, he promised his mother, who would not attend. She had been ailing. Besides, there would be a great crush of people as all Mournhold would be there. And being blind, she would be unable to see anything anyway. My son, she said, ere you go, fetch me a priest or healer, else I pass on the mortal plane ere you return. Symmachus crossed to her bed at once, and noted anxiously that her head was very hot, and her breathing shallow. He pried up the loose floorboard where their small hoard of savings was kept. There wasn't nearly enough to pay a priest for healing. He would have to give what they had and owe the rest. Symmachus snatched up his cloak and rushed away. The streets were full of folk hurrying to the sacred grove, but the Mage Guild and the temples were locked and barred. Closed for the ceremony, read the signs. Symmachus elbowed his way through the crowd and managed to overtake a brown-robed monk. "After the rite, brother," the monk said. "If you have gold, I shall gladly attend to your mother. My lord has bade all clerics to attend, and I shall not offend him." "My mother's desperately ill," Symmachus pled. "Surely my lord will not miss just one lowly monk." "The Father Abbot will," the monk said nervously, tearing his robe crowd. So there is format error, sadly. Symmachus tried other monks and mages too, but with no better result. Armed guards came to the street and pushed them aside with their lances, and Symmachus realized that the royal procession was approaching. As the royal carriage drew abreast, Symmachus rushed out from the crowd and shouted, "My lord, my mother is dying." "I forbid her to do so on this glorious night," the lord shouted, laughing and scattering coin into the throng. Symmachus was close enough to smell wine on the royal breath. On the other side of the carriage, his lady clutched her babe to her breast and stared wide-eyed at Symmachus. Her nostrils flared in disdain. "Guard!" she cried. "Remove this oaf!" Rough hands seized Symmachus. He was beaten and left dazed by the side of the road. Symmachus, head aching, followed in the wake of the crowd and watched the rite and naming from the top of the hill. He could see the brown-robed clerics and blue-robed mages gathered near the royal folk far below. Barenziah. The name came dim to Symmachus' ears as the high priest lifted the naked babe and showed her to the twin moons on either side of the horizon. Jode rising, Jode setting. "Behold the Lady Barenziah, born to the rule of Mournhold. Grant her thy blessings and thy counsel, ever that she rule to Mournhold's wheel." "Blessings, blessings," all the people murmured with their lord and lady, hands upraised. Only Symmachus stood silent, head bowed, knowing in his heart that his dear mother was gone. And in his silence he swore a mighty oath, that he should be his lord's bane, and in vengeance for his mother's needless death, the child Barenziah who he would have as his own bride, that his mother's grandchildren should be born to rule Mournhold. After the ceremony, he watched impassively as the royal procession returned to the palace. He saw the monk to whom he'd spoken first. The man came gladly now in return for the gold Symmachus had, and a promise of more later. They found the mother dead, as they had feared. The monk sighed and tucked the bag away. "I'm so sorry, brother. Well, you can forget the rest of the gold, as there's naught I can do here. Likely. Give me back my gold," Symmachus snarled. You've done naught to earn it." He lifted his right arm threateningly. The priest backed away, began a curse, but Symmachus struck him before more than 3 words had left his mouth. He went down heavily, striking his head sharply on one of the stones that formed the fire pit. He died instantly. Symmachus took the gold back and fled the city, muttering the name Barenziah. The child Barenziah stood at the upper balcony of the palace, staring down into the courtyard where soldiers milled, splendid in their armor. Presently they formed into ordered ranks and cheered as their parents, the lord and lady, emerged from the palace, clad head to toe in ebony armor, long purple-dyed fur cloaks flowing behind. Splendidly caparisoned shining black horses were brought for them, and they mounted and rode to the courtyard gates, then turned to salute her. "Barenziah," they cried. "Barenziah, farewell." The little girl blanked back tears and waved bravely with one hand. Her favorite stuffed toy animal, a gray wolf cub she called Woofin, clutched to her breast with the other. She had never been parted from her parents before and had no idea what it meant. save that there was a war in the west, and the names Tiber Septim and Symmachus were on everyone's lips, spoken with hate and dread. "Barenziah!" the soldiers cried, lifting their lances and swords and bows. Then her dear parents turned and rode away, soldiers trailing in their wake until the palace was nearly emptied. Sometime after came a day when Barenziah was shaken awake by her nurse, just hurriedly, and carried from the palace. All she remembered of that dreadful time was seeing a huge shadow with burning eyes that filled the sky. She was passed from hand to hand. Foreign soldiers appeared. Her nurse vanished and was replaced by strangers, some more strange than others. There were days, or was it weeks, of travel. One morning she woke to step from the couch of a cold place with a large gray stone house, set amid endless empty gray-green and hills patchily covered with gray-white snow. She clutched Wolf into her breast with both hands, and stood blinking and shivering in the gray dawn, feeling very small and very black in all this endless space, gray-white space. A large gray-white woman was staring at her with dreadful bright blue eyes. "She's very black, isn't she?" the woman remarked to her companion, a brown-skinned, black-haired woman named Hannah, who had been traveling with Barenziah for several days. "I've never seen a dark elf before." "I don't know much about them myself," Hannah said. "This one's got red hair and a temper to match, I can tell you that. Take care, she bites, and worse." "I'll soon train her out of that," the other woman sniffed. "And what's that filthy thing she's got? Ugh." The woman snatched Wolf away, and cast him into the fire blazing in the hearth. Barenziah shrieked, and would have flung herself into the fire after him, but she was forcibly restrained, despite her attempts to fight and claw her oppressors, while poor Wolfen was reduced to a little heap of charred ash. That's part one. Hey, Reedy. Time for part two. To figure out what part two is in this massive series. Barenziah grew like a weed transplanted to a Skyrim garden, a lord of Count Svend and his wife Inga. Outwardly she thrived, but there was a cold and empty place within. "I raised her as my own daughter," Lady Inga was wont to sigh when she sat gossiping with neighboring ladies come to visit. "But she's a dark elf! What can you expect?" Barenziah was not meant to overhear these words. At least she thought she was not. Her hearing was far keener than her ignored hosts. Other, less desirable dark elf traits included pilfering, lying, and a bit of magic. Just a small fire spell and a little levitation. And, as she grew older, a keen interest in boys and men, who could provide very pleasant sensations, and to her astonishment, gifts as well. Inga disapproved of this activity for reasons incomprehensible to Barenziah, so she was careful to keep it as secret as possible. "She's wonderful with the children," Inga added, meaning her 5 sons, all younger than Barenziah. "She'd never see them come to harm." A tutor was hired when Johnny was 6 and Barenziah 8, and she studied academic lessons along with him. She would have liked arms training as well, but the very idea of a girl training to arms scandalized Inga and Sven. Barenziah was given a bow and allowed target practice. Just want to make sure of something. To practice target shooting with the boys. She watched them at arms practice when she could practice with them when no grown folk were about, and knew she's very proud, isn't she? The neighbor ladies would whisper, and Barenziah, pretending not to hear, would nod in agreement. She could not help but feel superior to the Count and Countess. There was something about them that encouraged this disdain in her. She grew to learn that Sven and Inga were distant cousins of the last rulers of Dark Moon, and then she began to understand. They were posers, imposters, not rulers at all. At least, they were not raised to rule. This thought made her strangely furious at them, a good clean hatred detached from resentment. Barenziah came to see them as disgusting and corrupted insects who could be despised, but never feared. Once a month, a courier came from the emperor, bringing a small bag of gold for Inga and Sven, a large bag of dried mushrooms from Morrowind for Barenziah's consumption. She was always made presentable as a skinny dark elf girl could be made to look in Inga's eyes, and summoned into the courier's presence for a brief interview. The same courier seldom came twice, but all looked her over rather as a farmer looks over a pig he's readying for the market. In the spring of her 16th year, Barenziah thought the courier looked as if she were at last ready for market. Upon reflection, Barenziah decided that she did not wish to be marketed. The stable boy, Straw, a big blond boy, clumsy, gentle, affectionate, and rather simple, had been urging her to run off with him for some weeks. Barenziah stole the bag of gold the courier had left, took the mushrooms from the storeroom, dressed herself as a boy in some of 12-year-old Timmy's casual clothing, and one fine spring night, they took the 2 best horses and rode hard through the night toward Whiterun, the nearest city of any size, which is where Straw wanted to go. But Morrowind also lay east, and drew Barenziah as a lodestone does iron. In the morning they abandoned the horses at Barenziah's insistence. She knew they would be missed and tracked, and she hoped to throw pursuers off the trail. They continued afoot until late afternoon, keeping the side roads, then slept for several hours in an abandoned hut. They went down at dusk, and came to Whiterun city gates just before dawn. Barenziah had prepared a pass for Straw, stating an errand to a temple in the city for a local village lord. She herself sneaked over the wall with the help of a levitation spell. She had reasoned that by now the gate guards would have been alerted to look for a young dark elf and a Nord boy traveling together, but country boys like Straw were common enough. Alone and with papers, he would be unlikely to draw their attention. Her simple plan went smoothly. She met Straw at the temple, which was not far from the gate. She had been to Whiterun on a few previous occasions. Straw, however, had never been more than a few miles from Sven's estate, his birthplace. Together they made their way to a rundown inn in the poor quarter. Against the chill of the morning, her dark skin and red eyes were to them. They entered the inn separately. Sven paid the host for a single room, a large meal, and a jug of ale, and Barenziah sneaked in a few minutes later. They ate and drank gleefully, celebrating their escape, made love vigorously on the narrow bed, then fell into an exhausted sleep. They stayed a week in Whiterun. Straw earned a bit of money running errands, and Barenziah robbed a few houses at night. Barenziah continued to dress as a boy. She cut her hair short and dyed her flame-red tresses jet black as a further disguise, and kept out of sight as much as possible, but there were few dark elves in Whiterun. Then Straw got them places as guards for a merchant caravan that was traveling east. The sergeant looked her over dubiously. Heh, he chuckled. Dark elf, ain't ya? Like sending a wolf to guard the sheep, that is. Still, I need arms, and we ain't going near enough to Morrowind that ye can betray us to your brothers. A homegrown bandits will as life cut your throat as mine. The sergeant gave Straw an appraising look, then abruptly spun back to Barenziah, whipping out his short sword. But she had a knife out and was in a defensive stance. Straw drew his own knife and circled to the man's rear. The sergeant dropped his blade and chuckled again. Not bad, kids, not bad. How are you with that bow, Dark Elf? Barenziah demonstrated her prowess. Aye, not bad at all. And you'll be keen of eye at night and hearing at all times. A trusty Dark Elf makes as good a fighting man as any could ask for. I know. I served under Symmachus himself before I lost this arm, and got it validated out of the Emperor's forces. We could betray them. I know folk could pay well, Straw said later, as they bedded down for their last night in the old inn. Or rob them ourselves. They're very rich, those merchants are, Barry. Barenziah chuckled. Whatever would we do with so much money? And we need their protection for traveling quite as much as they need ours. We could buy a little farm and settle down. Peasant, Barenziah thought scornfully. Straw was a peasant and had peasant dreams. All she said was, not here, Straw. We're too close to Darkmoor still. We have more chances farther east. The caravan went only as far east as Sungard. Tiber Septim had done much in the way of building relatively safe patrolled highways. But its tolls were steep, and this particular caravan kept to side roads as much as possible to avoid them. This exposed them to the hazards of robber barons, both human and orcish, and roving bands of brigands of various races. But such were the perils of trade and profit. They had 2 such encounters before reaching Sungard, an ambush which Barenziah's keen ears detected, and plenty of time for them to circle about and surprise the lurkers, and a night attack by a mixed band of Khajiit, humans, and wood elves. The latter were a skilled band, and even Barenziah did not hear them sneak up in time to give much warning. The fighting was fierce. The attackers were driven off, but 2 of the caravan's guards were killed, and Straw got a nasty cut on his thigh before he and Barenziah killed his Khajiit assailant. Barenziah rather enjoyed the life. The garrulous sergeant had taken a liking to her, and she spent most of her evenings sitting around the campfire, listening to his tales of campaigning in Morrowind with Tiber Septim and Symmachus. Symmachus had been made a general after Mournhold fell, the sergeant said. He's a fine soldier, Symmachus is, but there's more than soldiery involved in Morrowind, if you take my drift. Well, you know about that, I expect. I don't remember, Barenziah said. I mostly lived in Skyrim. My mother married a Skyrim man. They're both dead. So, what happened to Lord and Lady of Mournhold? The sergeant shrugged. I never heard. Dead, I expect. All Morrowind's under military rule now. It's pretty quiet. Maybe too quiet. Like a calm before the storm. You going back there? Maybe, Barenziah said. The truth was that she was drawn to Morrowind like a magnet. Straw sensed it and was unhappy about it. He was unhappy anyway, since they could not bed together, and she was supposed to be a boy. Barenziah rather missed it too, but not as much as Straw did, seemingly. The sergeant wanted them to sign on for the return trip, but gave them a bonus when they parted, and letters of recommendation. Straw wanted to settle permanently near Sungard, but Barenziah insisted on continuing to travel east. I'm the Queen of Mournhold by rights, she said, unsure whether it was true, or it was a story she had made up as a child. I want to go home. I need to go home. That at least was true. She had run out of mushrooms and was very hungry for them. She found a few for sale in the Sungard marketplace, but they were not as good or satisfying as the ones the courier had brought. After a few weeks, they managed to get places in the caravan heading east. By early winter, they were in Riften and near the Morrowind border, but the weather had grown severe, and they were told no merchant caravans would set forth until mid-spring. Barenziah stood atop the city walls and stared across the deep gorge that separated Riften from the snow-clad mountain wall of Morrowind beyond. Barry, Straw said gently. Mournhold's a long way off yet, nearly as far as we've come already, and the lands between are wild, full of wolves and bandits and orcs and still worse creatures. We'll have to wait for spring. There's Silgrad Tower, Barry said, referring to the dark elf town that had grown up around the ancient tower that guarded the border between Skyrim and Morrowind. The bridge guards won't let me across, Barry. They're crack Imperial troops. They can't be bribed. If you go alone. I won't try to stop you. But what will you do? Silgard Tower is full of Imperial troops. Will you become a washerwoman for them? A camp follower? No, Barenziah said thoughtfully. Actually, the idea was not entirely unappealing. She was sure that she could earn a modest living by sleeping with the soldiers for money. Well, Barenziah's a pretty, scandalous woman. She'd had a few adventures at Sword as they crossed Skyrim, when she dressed as a woman and slipped away from Straw. She'd only been looking for a bit of variety. Straw was sweet but dull. She'd been startled, but pleased when the men she picked up offered him money afterwards. Well, we've learned quite a bit about Barenziah now. And how on earth is it that Ricky's able to get her? She's basically, they're basically saying she's willing for anyone, but yet Ricky can't get her. That's it, how bad of Ricky is. Straw had been unhappy about it, and would shout for a while, then sulk for days afterwards if he caught her at it. He was very jealous. He even threatened to leave her. But the Imperial Guards were tough and brutal by all accounts, and Barenziah had heard some very ugly stories during travels. The ugliest stories had come from the lips of ex-veterans around the caravan campfire, and were proudly recounted. They'd been trying to shock her. And Straw, she realized. But she also realized that there was some truth behind the wild tales. Straw hated that kind of talk, and hated having her hear it. But there was a part of him that was fascinated by it. Barenziah had encouraged Straw to seek out other women, but he said he didn't want anyone but her. She told him she didn't feel that way, but she did like him better than anyone else. Then why do you go with other men? I don't know, dear. Straw sighed. They say dark elf women are like that. Barenziah smiled and shrugged. You know, for a dark elf, Barenziah didn't look like a dark elf, you know. Now that I think back on it, Barenziah looked kinda humanish. Yeah! I mean, the woman in the red looked more alien-like than Barenziah. Barenziah smiled and shrugged. I know. I guess that's all the explanation there is. And that's the end of part 2. Alright, let's get to part 3. Why? Because we're marathon this thing, and well, the closer we get to part 4, the better, because then we can read part 4 and say, we don't have to worry about the library. Plus, we started a whole section, and we've only done like 30 minutes so far. And I didn't really like doing 40-minute parts for, whatchamacallit, Emperor, whatever his name is, King Edward. It just kind of ended up happening that way. Okay, they sailed into Riften for the winter, taking a cheap room in the slums. Barenziah joined the Thieves Guild, knowing there would be trouble if she was caught freelancing. One day in the barroom, she caught the eye of a known member of the guild, a bold young Khajiit named Theris. She offered to bed with him if he would sponsor her for membership. He looked her over, grinning, and agreed, but she would have to pass a test. What sort of test? Ah, Theris said. Payment first, sweet thing. He put an arm around her, leaned over, and kissed her, thrusting his tongue deep into her mouth and his free hand into her shirt. Nice, he said presently, withdrawing his tongue, but not his hand. His other hand slid down into her waistband and fondled her buttocks. Okay, this is getting risky. Let's go upstairs. We can use my room. Barenziah felt both embarrassed and excited by his boldness. Theris grinned insolently. Why bother? You want me, don't you? I'll bet you'd pay me, wouldn't you? No, Barenziah said. She did want him, but not that badly. No? Well, a bargain's a bargain, and Theris keeps his word. But here, now. He hiked her skirt up and pulled her onto his lap so that she sat astride, facing him. He opened her shirt and pulled it down on her shoulders so that her breasts were exposed. Nice pair, kid. She was facing the wall so that she could feel the stares of the other patrons. A hush had fallen over the place. Even the bard had stilled. She felt both nausea and a hot, burned desire. Her hands released his turgid penis, and then it was inside her, and she was screaming at both pain and ecstasy. Then everything went black. When she came to herself again, she was sitting beside Theris, who was buttoning her shirt. "That hurts," she said in dignity. "Always hurts, kid. Didn't anyone tell you about Khajiit men? It hurts good, though, now doesn't it?" Barenziah scowled at him. She was still smarting. His penis had tiny little barbs on it. "Well, the deal's off, if you like," he shrugged. "No, I didn't say that. Only I prefer privacy, and I want to wait a while, like a day or so, before the next time." Theris laughed. "You're okay, kid. Star was going to kill her, and maybe Theris too. When Tim really possessed her to do such a thing?" She cast an anxious look around the room, but the other patrons had lost interest and gone back to their own business. She did not recognize any of them. This wasn't the inn where she lived. With luck, it'd be a while, or never, before Straw found out. But Theris was by far the most exciting and attractive man she had yet met. He not only told her about the skills needed to be a member of the Thieves' Guild, but trained her in them himself, or introduced her to people who could teach her. Among these was a Nord woman who knew something about magic. Katisha was plump and matronly. She was married to a smith, who had 2 teenage children, and was perfectly ordinary and respectable, except that she was very fond of cats, had a gift for certain kinds of magic, and cultivated rather odd friends. She taught Barenziah an invisibility skill, and trained her in other forms of stealth and disguise. Katisha mingled magical and non-magical talents freely, using one to enhance the other. She was not a member of the Thieves' Guild, but was fond of Theris in a motherly sort of fashion. Barenziah warmed to her, as she had never had any woman, and over the next few weeks, she told Katisha all about herself. She brought Straw there, too. Straw approved of Katisha, but not of Theris. Theris found Straw amusing, and suggested to Barenziah that they arrange what he called a threesome. "Indeed not," Barenziah said, grateful that Theris had broached the subject in private. "He wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it." Theris smiled his charming triangular cut smile, and sprawled lazily back in his chair, curling his tail. "You might both be surprised. Perrin is so boring. Well, would you mind if I brought a friend?" "Yes, if you're bored with me and your friend can find someone else." She was a member of the Thieves' Guild now. She found Theris useful, but not essential. Maybe she was a bit bored with him too. She talked to Katisha about her med problems. Katisha shook her head, and told her she was looking for love, not sex. That she'd know the right man when she found him, and that neither Straw nor Theris was the right one for her. Barenziah cocked her head from one side to one side quizzically. "They say dark elf women are pro something. Prostitutes? You mean promiscuous? Although some do become prostitutes, I suppose. Elf women are promiscuous when they are young. You'll outgrow it. Perhaps you're beginning to already," Katisha said hopefully. "You ought to meet some nice elven boys, though. If you keep on keeping company with Khajiits and humans, you'll find yourself pregnant soon." Barenziah smiled involuntarily at the thought. "I'd like that. But it'd be a bit inconvenient, wouldn't it? Babies are a lot of trouble, and I don't even have a home yet. How old are you? 17? Well, you have a year or two left before you'll be fertile, unless you're very unlucky. Elves don't have children readily with other elves, even after that, so you'll be alright if you stick with them. Straw wants to buy a farm and marry me. Is that what you want?" "No, not yet. Maybe someday, if I can't be a queen. I think Straw will be a very old man before someday comes, Barry. Elves live a very long time. Khadijah's face briefly wore the wistful look humans got when contemplating the 1,000-year lifespan that elves were entitled to by nature. True, few ever actually lived that long, as disease and violence took a toll, but they could. I like old men too, Barry said. Well then, and yet Ricky does not even seem to have a chance with her. This is pretty sad, actually. Okay, anyway, we've worked our way to this point. Let's actually read Barenziah Part 4. So that way we can say it's read. Barenziah fidgeted impatiently while Theris sorted through the papers in the desk. He was being meticulous and methodical, careful to replace everything just as he'd found it. They'd enter a nobleman's house, leaving Straw outside as a lookout. Theris said it was a very simple job, but very secret. He hadn't even wanted to bring any other guild members along. He said he knew he could trust Barry and Straw. Tell me what you're looking for and I'll find it, Barry whispered. Theris's night sight wasn't as good as hers, and he didn't want to make a light. Barry had never been in such a luxurious place. She gazed around with wonder as they made their way through the huge, echoing downstairs rooms. But Theris didn't seem interested in anything but the desk and the small book-lined study on the upper floor. Psst, he hissed angrily. Someone's coming, Barry said, a moment before the door opened and two dark figures appeared. Theris gave her a violent shove toward them and sprang away toward the window. Barenziah's muscles went rigid. She couldn't move or even speak. She watched helplessly as a dark figure leaped after Theris. There were two quick, silent blue flares of light. Then Theris folded in a still heap. Outside the study, the house had come alive with footsteps and voices calling and the clank of armor. The big man, a dark elf, half lifted, half dragged Theris to the door and thrust him into waiting arms. A jerk of the elf's head sent his robed companion after him. The elf came over to inspect Barenziah, who was once again able to move, although her head throbbed maddeningly when she did so. Open your shirt, Barenziah, the elf said. Barenziah gaped at him and clutched it closed. You are a girl, aren't you, Barry? He said softly. You should have stopped dressing as a boy a few months ago, you know. You were only drawing attention to yourself. And calling yourself Barry. Is your friend Straw too stupid to remember anything else? It's a common elf name, Barenziah defended herself. The man shook his head sadly. Not among dark elves it isn't, my dear. But you really don't know much about dark elves, do you? I regret that, but it couldn't be helped. No matter, I'll remedy it. Who are you? Barenziah demanded. So much for my fame, the man shrugged, smiling wryly. I am Symmachus, my lady, and it's a merry chase you've led me, although I guess you'd head for Morrowind. You had a bit of luck. A body was found in Whiterun that was thought to be Straw's, so I stopped looking for the pair. That was careless of me. Yet I'd not have thought you'd have stayed together this long. Where is he? Is he alright? Oh, he's fine for now. In custody, of course. You care for him, then. He stared at her with curiosity out of red eyes that was so strange to her, except in their own seldom-seen image. He's my friend, Barenziah said. The words came in tone that sounded dull and hopeless in her own ears. Symmachus, a general in the Imperial Army, said to have the friendship and the ear of Tiber Septim himself. Aye, you seem to have several unsuitable friends, if you'll forgive me saying so, my lady. As they talked, the bustle and flurry in the house had died away, although she could hear people, presumably the residents, whispering together not far off. The tall elf seated himself in the corner of the desk. He seemed quite relaxed and prepared to stay a while. Several? What's going to happen to them? To me? Ah. As you know, this house belongs to the commander of the Imperial troops in this area. Barenziah gasped, and Symmachus looked up sharply. You didn't know? You are rash, even for 17. You must always know what it is you do. But the guild wouldn't... Barenziah was trembling. The Thieves' Guild would have never dared attempt a mission that involved Imperial policies. No one dared oppose Tiber Septim. At least no one that she knew of. I dare say, it's unlikely that Theris had guild approval for this job. I wonder... Symmachus examined the desk carefully, pulling out its drawers. He selected one, placed its contents on the desktop, and removed the false bottom. There was a folded sheet of paper inside. It seemed to be a map of some sort. Barenziah edged closer to see it. Symmachus held it away from her, laughing. Rash indeed. He glanced it over, then folded and replaced it. You advised me to seek knowledge. So I did. So I did. Suddenly he seemed to be in a high good humor. We must be going, my dear lady. He shepherded her to the door, down the stairs, and out into the night air. No one was about. Barenziah's eyes started to the shadows. She wondered if she could outrun him, or elude him somehow. You're not thinking of attempting to escape, are you? Don't you want to hear what my plans are you first? He sounded a bit hurt. Yes. Perhaps you'd rather hear about your friends first. No. He looked pleased. It was the answer he wanted, but it was also the truth. While Barenziah was concerned for her friends, especially Straw, she was far more concerned for herself. You'll take your rightful place as Queen of Mournhold. Her heart leapt. It was really true then. Symmachus explained that this had been his and Tiber Septim's plan all along. That Mournhold, which had been left under military rule for the dozen years since she had left, was to be returned, gradually, to civilian government, under Imperial guidance of course, and as a part of the Imperial province of Morrowind. But why was I sent to Darkmoor? For safekeeping. Why did you run away? Barenziah shrugged. I saw no reason to stay. I should have been told. You would have been by now. I had in fact sent for you to be removed to the Imperial City to spend some time as part of the Emperor's household. As for your destiny, it should have been obvious to you. Tiber Septim does not keep those he has no use for. And what else could you be that is of use to him? I know nothing of him or you. Then know this. Tiber Septim rewards friend and foe alike, according to their deserts. Barenziah chewed on that for a few moments. Straw has deserved well of me, and has never done anyone any harm. He is not a member of the Thieves' Guild. He came along to protect me. He earns our keep by running errands. And Symmachus waved her to silence. I know all about Straw, he said. And about Theris? So? What would you? Straw wants a little farm. If I'm to be rich, then I would give it to him. Very well, he shall have it. And Theris? He betrayed me, Barenziah said in a low voice. Theris should have told her the risk the job entailed. Further, he pushed her right into their foe's arms in an attempt to save himself. Yes, and... well, he should be made to suffer for it, shouldn't he? That seems reasonable. What form should the suffering take? Barenziah balled her arms into fists. She'd like to beat and claw to Khajiit herself, but that didn't seem very queenly. A whipping! Would 20 stripes be too much, do you think? I don't want to do him any permanent injury. I shall arrange it. Barenziah spent 2 days in Symmachus' apartment, during which she kept very busy. There was a dark elf woman named Drolene who saw to their needs, although she did not seem to be exactly a servant, as she took her meals with them. Nor was she his wife. Drolene seemed amused when Barenziah asked her about that. She simply said that she was in Symmachus' employ, and did whatever he asked of her. With Drolene's assistance, several fine gowns and a pair of shoes were ordered for her, plus a riding habit and boots, along with other small necessities. Barenziah was given a room to herself. Symmachus was out a great deal. She saw him at most meals, but he said little about himself or what he had been doing. Although he was cordial and polite, was quite willing to converse on most subjects, and seemed interested in anything she had to say. Drolene was much the same. Barenziah saw them pleasant enough, but hard to get to know, as Katisha would have put it. She felt an odd disappointment. These were the first dark elves with whom she associated closely. She had expected to feel comfortable with them, to feel, at last, that this was where she belonged. Instead, she found herself yearning for annoyed friends. Katisha and Straw. When Symmachus told her if they were to set out for the Imperial City on the morrow, she asked if she could say goodbye to her friends. Katisha? He asked. Well enough. I suppose I owe her something. She it was who led me to you by telling me of a lonely dark elf girl named Berry who need elven friends, and sometimes dressed as a boy. She has no association with the Thieves' Guild, and no one associated with the Thieves' Guild seems to know your true identity, save Theris. That is well. I prefer that your former guild membership not be made public knowledge. You'll speak of it to no one. It does not become an Imperial Queen. No one but Straw and Theris. They won't tell anyone. No, they won't. He didn't know that Katisha knew then. Straw came into their apartment the morning of their departure, and they were left alone in the parlor, although Barenziah knew that the other elves were well within hearing. Straw looked drawn and pale. They hugged one another silently for a few minutes. Straw's shoulders were shaken, and tears were rolling down his cheeks, but he said nothing. Barenziah tried to smile. So we both get what we want. I'm to be Queen of Mournhold, and you'll be king of your own farm. I'll write you. You must find a scribe so you can write me too. Straw shook his head sadly, and when Barenziah persisted, he opened his mouth and pointed inside, making an articulate noise. His tongue was gone! Barenziah collapsed onto a chair and wept noisily. Why? She demanded Symmachus, when Straw had been ushered away. Why? Symmachus shrugged. He knows too much of you. He could be dangerous. At least he's alive, and he won't need his tongue to farm. I hate you! Barenziah screamed at him, then leaned over and vomited on the floor. She continued to revile him between intermittent bouts of nausea. He listened stolidly for some time, when Drolene cleaned up after her. Finally, he told her to cease, or he would gag her for the journey. They stopped at Katisha's house. Symmachus and Drolene didn't dismount. All seemed normal, but Barenziah was frightened as she knocked on the door. Katisha answered her knock. She'd obviously been weeping, but she embraced Barenziah. Why are you crying? Barenziah asked. For Theris, of course. You haven't heard? He's dead. He was caught stealing from the commandant's house. Poor fellow, but it was so foolish of him. Oh, Barenziah, he was drawn in court this very dawn by the commandant's order. I went. He asked for me. It was terrible. He suffered so before he died. I'll never forget it. I looked for you in Straw, but no one knew where you got to. That's Symmachus you're with, isn't it? You know, the very moment I saw him, I thought, this is the one for Barenziah. I told him about you, you know. Yes, Barenziah said. Katisha, I love you, but swear you don't ever tell anyone else about me. Ever. Swear you won't. Especially not Symmachus. And look at the poor straw for me. Katisha promised, puzzled but willing. Barry, it wasn't somehow because of me that Theris was caught. I never said anything about Theris to Symmachus. Barenziah assured her that it wasn't. The informer had told her of the Imperial Guard of Theris' plan, which was probably a lie, but Katisha badly needed some kind of comfort. Oh, I'm glad of that. If I could be glad of anything just now. I'd hate to think, but how could I have known? And Symmachus is very handsome, don't you think? And charming. I don't know, Barenziah said. I haven't really thought about it. There hasn't been time. She explained about being Queen of Mournhold and going to live in Imperial City for a while first. He was looking for me. I don't think he thinks of me as a woman at all. He said I don't look like a boy, though, she added in the face of Katisha's incredulity. She knew that Barenziah evaluated every male she saw in terms of sexual desirability. I suppose it's the shock of finding out I really am a queen, she added. And Katisha agreed that must be something of a shock, although one there was no likelihood of her experiencing firsthand. The party left Riften by the Great South Gate. Once through, Symmachus tapped her shoulder and pointed back through the gate. I thought you might want to say goodbye to Theris too, he said. Barenziah stared briefly, but steadily, at the head impaled on a spike above the gate. The birds were at it, but the face was still recognizable. I think he will not hear me, she said. Let's be on our way, shall we? Symmachus was clearly disappointed by her lack of reaction. You heard this from Katisha? Of course. She attended the execution, Barenziah said casually. If he did not know already, he'd find out soon enough. She was sure of that. But did she know Theris belonged to the guild? Everyone knew that. It's only lower-ranking members like me who are supposed to keep their membership secret. The ranking officers are well known. But you know all that, don't you? She smiled archly at him. So you told her who you were and whence you came, but not about the guild. The guild membership was not my secret to tell. The other was. There is a difference. Besides, Katisha's a very honest person. Had I told her, it would have lessened me in her eyes. She was always after Theris to take up a more honest line of work. I value her good opinion. She also thought I'd be happier if I settled down with just one man friend, one of my own race. You, in fact. Isn't it odd how wishes come true sometimes, but not in the way you want them to? Yes, very odd. Something about the way he said it made her think she herself was one of his wishes that had come true in a way that wasn't altogether to his liking. And so I think that's actually a good place to stop. We read the 4 up to page 4, and now we have basically everything else prepared and ready for us in our inventory. Basically, we don't have to hunt down anything else, and guess what? We don't have to worry about the randomness of this library, and possibly it disappearing from the library on the next playthrough. Which would stink! That would absolutely stink, and that was one reason why I was like so adamant to try and get that much done at least. But, get it done we did! And so, we are free for it from the time being. We still have 6 parts to go, which is going to be a bit of a lengthy period of time. Hopefully I can all marathon it through one stream, but I know my endurance, and I probably won't do it in one stream. I'm hoping I can. Anyway, we're getting there. We're getting there, slowly but surely. We're almost done. Like I said, this is the last thing, so once this is done, we can finally get back to our goals. aka trying to figure out where in God's name we're supposed to be even going. So yeah, next stream will actually be more reading, but up and coming, we're getting very close. We'll be starting to focus once again on actually making progress in this game for the first time in a very, very long time. And it'll be nice indeed. I can't believe we're this close. Anyway, with all that in mind, it has definitely been an adventure. at least the good news about this Real Barenziah is that it reads a lot better than, say, like King Edward. Like I said, the problem with King Edward was the massive amount of the format errors and the fact that the plotline really made no sense what was going on half the time. Real Barenziah, I can follow at least, and it has some interest because it does tie into Elder Scrolls Arena. At least what we read from the biography of Barenziah. I wonder if we're going to get to that part here. So far, if I remember correctly from the biography of Barenziah, I believe like Symmachus and all that was mentioned there too. I believe almost like I remember them mentioning straw, so maybe that was like a summary of this or something. I'm not exactly sure. Um, I think the biography of Barenziah said something along the lines of though that she got like tied into it with that it was all Straw's idea and all that, and that she had all these problems, and that I think they actually said that she informed the commandant about the robbery or something like that. So yeah, I think what that is that one's almost like the fake tale of the Queen Barenziah. And that's what I guess this is about. This is the real version, the true version of the story, which reveals the total uncensored version, which is pretty uncensored. But beside that point, yeah, this um, it's basically telling you what really happened with Queen Barenziah. Though I don't really know exactly why we need a true version after that, because what exactly are they going to cover up of the Jaga Tharn story? I can't imagine that being covered up. That's not really covered up at all. But it does seem like it's a bit longer than the biography one was. So hopefully we'll get a lot more details, which would be nice. Because more details of the tie into arena would be interesting. And so we got to see Symmachus and see how basically he's been this massive manipulator and how he has had this massive weird goal to marry her, and now basically has her, but not somehow in the way he thought. I guess because the Emperor took like interest in her or something, and it's like she's too important or something. Or maybe he's actually fallen for her, and he is upset because he didn't want to fall for her, or something like that. I don't know. It kind of left on a cliffhanger like that, but we are at least finally past part 4. Can just start reading forward and just start dealing with the last 6 books. Then we do whatever we need to do. Anyway, I've rambled for long enough. Thank you very much all for watching, and I shall see you all next time.